Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Bubbly Project. Yeah. Okay. I don't have that much editing skills to add the crowd noises, but it's fine. Anyway, I just wanted to get into and say that, of course, today's episode is on religion and politics. We'll be getting into the episode, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a personal anecdote. I just want to say I've grown up in a family where we were kind of pro Congress, but I've never been pro politics. I find that it's a very corrupted. Unfortunately, that's like my viewpoint, and that's why I'm trying to educate myself more because I'm gonna turn 18 this year, and I really want to know what I'm getting into when I have to vote. So that's about it, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you disagree with the opinions, please talk constructively. We can have a constructive conversation on DMs. But yes, enjoy, and I thank my guests so much.
Welcome everybody to the Bubbly Project. Today, as you probably saw from the title, we are going to be talking about religion and the government. We're trying to do like a commentary probably. And I have two amazing guests with me here. We have Xara. She is a Rishi Valley student and she's in 12th grade, but she knows a lot about politics for her age. And we have Arnava here with us, who is one of a very good old ex-Vidyaranyan to any Vidyaranyans out there, who also is very politically aware. So this whole interview is just supposed to be a good discussion. I hope whoever watches this will learn something from it. But yeah, let's begin. So obviously the topic is kind of controversial, and I mean controversy is key, and chaos brings opportunity. But let's begin right into the fire and talk about media. So, rather about freedom of speech. So, I'm sure everyone knows about Arnab Goswami and the whole situation that is happening with all of that. We've watched all of the IGTV videos. We watched all the news videos. And I've got to say, initially, I didn't hate Arnab Goswami. In fact, I thought he was a very entertaining anchor. But I will say that it does kind of irk me at the fact that when he got attacked as a, what should I say, as a person who's more pro BJP and he blamed it on Congress. I mean, doesn't that happen to people who are in the opposition and journalists who are in the opposition all the time? So that's kind of what I would like to start our conversation with. Basically, that also delves into the hypocrisy behind freedom of speech. So, if you guys have anything to share about that. So what I'm trying to point out is we always hear again, mean, just as someone who reads it on Instagram or like for example, you both would post it on your stories and such. About so many journalists who've been killed, journalists who've been jailed.
Right.
And those, what I'm not trying to say, I think that, if we have freedom of speech, obviously we'll have Republic TV talking pro BJP. I'm not saying that they should stop that. It's a democracy. Everyone can say what they want to say because that's what the Constitution is given to us. But what I mean to say is the hypocrisy, as in those people are being jailed for saying something like that, or being killed. So when it happens to him, this one instance that it happens again, I'm sure he gets a lot of hate online. We don't know about that. But the one instance that happens to him, and the whole um the whole of India kind of just goes crazy about it, and like it's shared everywhere.
Right.
Probably because he has such a big platform. Maybe I don't know if that's
I sort of understand what you're saying.
yeah.
I mean, if let's say it wasn't Arnav Goswami and it was another journalist who was anti-BJP,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say he said the same thing that Arnav Goswami said about Sonia Gandhi, about a BJP MP
Yes.
or a BJP president or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't think the same situation would be happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Now this is not just Indian television. But generally, the media usually circulates, and I think Zara, this is. I mean, you can give you would have more insight on this. The next question that I wanted to put out is the power of the misinformation that is given out in media about religion, even about Hinduism or Christianity or Islam. There's so much that happens. People tend to highlight only on the negative things. So, for example, um, for example, Ganesh Chaturthi, everyone talks about the pollution, which is a fact. Like it is something that happens during that time. But the celebration that happens during Ganesh Chaturthi, the community and all of that is something that people usually fail to perceive.
Obviously, misinformation plays a huge part in how the religion is perceived. And for example, Islam is considered to be a very violent religion.
Yes.
Um, and that is because of misinformation, misquoting, cherry picking of verses from the Quran.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
I think, like, religion is a social force. I mean, in the sense that, it brings in a lot of unity among people from within that religion. But it's okay as long as it remains, a social force in a progressive way, like for a development cause or for a good cause. That's all right. But when religion is just used as, like, just religion is just used as a, a force which is going to spread hatred against one community or another community, then I think it's nothing but an antisocial force. uh, like, I think people give religion too much importance overall in general. So I think the unity which religion brings into people also is a little divisive, especially in a
Yeah,
very
no, definitely. Yeah.
multicultural, diverse country like India, because when one community unifies themselves so much, there that inevitably does alienate another community from, because of the cultural differences, because of religious differences, and so on, so and so. But overall, what I'm trying to say is that as long as religion is a personal affair, it's okay. But it cannot just be intermingled with politics too much. And if that happens, I think it is bound to get, the society will get polarized no matter what. And we've seen that happening in India, not only now, in the past, and now more than ever before in the past. So that's basically it.
Yeah, no, another point about, media and religion is something about religious propaganda. Also, political propaganda is something because we have social media now, right? And we have sites like Twitter where, our prime ministers and the presidents and basically the leaders of all world nations are able to send out messages to the public, to the world, like through something like Twitter, which earlier probably would never have been done. Um, some I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you all are aware of, but something that really, bothered me personally, when the whole CAA thing was happening, right? All of the protests and everything. I don't know if you remember, but on Twitter, BJP leaders, and I mean, if we can find the screenshots, great. But BJP leaders and basically anyone who was probably paid to do this had tweeted things like, because it was a certain, if I'm not wrong, it was a phone number that if they had dialed, that meant that they were with the right, with the law or something like that. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So these people would post Twitter posts or statuses or whatever, and they would be like, if you call this number, you'd get like Sunny Leone on the phone, or if you call this number, you get
Yeah.
like Hrithik Roshan. Now listen,
Oh my God.
I know, yeah. So what my question is that how far should politics be should seep into social media, because that's also a type of media, right? We've talked about, like television and that, but how far should politics, because it's a dangerous thing, especially I mean, like, for example, this show, right? The whole point of the show is for me to like educate myself and educate other people. Isn't it, doesn't that mean that it's so much easier for, leaders with more money to make more convincing things on social media and to say inappropriate things and be like, oh, that was all joke. I mean, if you've seen any of Trump's tweets, some of them are, for a political leader, it does not make sense to make such statements regardless of whether you're a human being or not.
Mm.
So how far should politics intermingle with social media? That's my question.
Uh, I don't. I don't know. As in, does social media include WhatsApp?
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, but I feel like WhatsApp is used more as a communicative app. But I mean, sure, sure.
Yeah, you have, like, I don't know if you're aware of it, but you have BJP IT cells.
Uh-huh.
So these are people who are employed to forward WhatsApp messages or to troll people online.
Yeah.
And so they send messages that um, spread false information about what's happening,
Yeah, yeah.
and messages like I got a WhatsApp forward that said Muslim women are more fertile than women of any other religion, and Muslims are reproducing faster, 4 times faster. I don't even know where they get the statistics from. 4 times faster than Hindu women, and so we should start having more kids. So when you have, I mean, stuff like that, it's very hard to control it. But then again, on the other side, I think politics should be linked with social media, because there are a lot of things that I know only through social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have never known of things without social media, without people tweeting about it
Mhm.
or spreading information about it. Because when you just have TV, you're looking at very biased channels. I mean, when I switch on the TV, I have ABP News, I have Z News, I have India Today, Republic TV.
Then what about like
But
accessibility? So like what
what
I
do you
mean to
mean by
say is,
that?
so yeah, so what I mean is like that BJP or whatever, any government really, even Congress and anything is trying to get into social media. Could it be because of like younger, they want to kind of grasp younger audience because they're more, or people who don't
Yeah.
have television and
No,
everything?
I think grasping younger people is already done by their sister organization, the RSS.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been training kids since they were born
yeah,
to have that kind of ideology.
ideology. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think this is aimed at everyone. This is aimed at all sections of society.
because most,
WhatsApp forwards are really powerful.
I know, yeah, people a lot like even
I
with
mean,
my, yeah, no, no,
everybody, my parents believe it. So, I mean, it's something that's very believable, and you don't go back and check on things, right? You don't go and see whether this is right or this is wrong. I mean, you just forward it.
yeah.
That's what most people do.
I mean, like even with the example of like coronavirus, how much false information was spread
Yeah,
about that.
not only
So
through WhatsApp, but on
yeah,
TV.
yes,
You had
yes,
Times Now, you had Republic TV, with what's his name, Baba Ramdev, saying that if you can hold your breath to up to 1 minute, you don't have coronavirus. Things like that.
yeah,
Or you had Sadhguru saying, this is not the time to pick loopholes in the system. What you should
yeah.
do is support the government and praise healthcare workers.
Anava, is there anything
So
you'd like to say?
yeah, but I think you know what? I think social media is a really important platform for a
Right.
very democratic access to information.
Right.
Like that's because of with the internet, with the advent of social media, like we have progressed and a lot more because of the democratization of information. Because otherwise, information is still concentrated in the hands of a few people.
Yeah,
Like those of them who can watch TV, those of them who can watch, afford newspapers. Not a lot of people are literate to read newspapers. Not a lot of people can have the time to follow like newspapers and also watch TV and all of that. So there's so many reasons for that. But otherwise, yeah, it is like social media has allowed people from everywhere, every corner of the world to access news. For
yes,
example, once upon a time, like even 5 to 6 years ago, we were not very aware about, what the president of America says unless we go and switch on the TV and put up a
yeah,
channel like BBC.
yeah, yeah,
But right now we
Yeah.
have it right in front of our phones. Like, okay, yeah, you know what Trump says, and just in like as soon as you switch on, like open Twitter or Instagram, you can see what Trump says. So in that way, it is a really it's sort of like promotes democracy, but it's not whether the question of whether social media and politics is good or bad. It's not just the binary. It's just that, okay, that social media has been weaponized against a particular community for political interests, for their own opportunistic reasons,
Yeah.
basically. So we can't really say social media and politics should not be linked,
Mhm.
because a lot of people
Yeah.
right now are extremely political on social media, and
Right.
like pro and against, but pro fascism, pro
Yeah.
a lot of things, against a lot of things. So right now, like, the the social media is being weaponized for very wrong reasons. Misinformation, false news has been peddling, like Zara said, on by a lot of organizations. Okay, yeah, not only the BJP IT cell. BJP IT cell does it a lot, but it happens a lot. So just but in general, it happens a lot. Like, even about coronavirus, there were, like, last year there were these incidents where there was just fake news about uh, children being kidnapped by older men, and that was a random
Yeah.
fake news, and that sort of killed about 15 to 16 people, I guess. I'm not subject to correction again. So I think we must make more necessary arrangements to prevent the spread of false information, rather than just say that, okay, you know what, social media is completely wrong.
Yeah.
So we should make more necessary arrangements right now, because right now there are a lot of more, the governments of Telangana and a couple of other states have actually combined with different organizations like Factly and stuff like that, so that to
So that
bust
no
all
fake
these.
news gets
uh,
spread.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
and also there have been like taking action against the group heads, whoever is spreading
Mm-hmm.
the fake news.
Yeah.
And even WhatsApp has restricted the number of forwards from unlimited to just 5 people right now.
Okay.
So I know these are not really working at the moment. Like, fake news has no borders, like, not only on WhatsApp. It happens on Facebook, it happens on YouTube, it happens on Twitter. So I think, like, overall, I think there is nothing wrong with social media and politics. It's just, rather than how it's being utilized, how it's being used, how it's being
You mean like
weaponized.
the platform is not the problem, it's the people behind
Yeah,
it.
it's the people who's the problem.
In our government and this political climate especially, there's a lot of there's a lot of, what should I say, hypocrisy that goes around currently when new laws are being made and when policies are being made and all of that. Now, is it possible, do you think, for our government to sort of not necessarily rewrite the constitution, because that actually does happen, but to pass unconstitutional acts or do unconstitutional things and get away with it? And this is any government, not necessarily just the BJP.
Okay, so I think it's easier now for the government to do more unconstitutional things and get away with it, like they've done with the CA and UAPA and other things, which is sort of eroding what the Constitution says. Also, because now there's a question mark on the judiciary, because the judiciary is not being able to do much because they have pressure from the government. So I think it's easier now than it has been ever to do things like this and get away with it.
Yeah, so I think it all ultimately depends on how autonomous and independent the judiciary is, and we don't even know that something is constitutional and one law is constitutional and the other law is unconstitutional. Even otherwise, unconstitutional laws will be passed off as constitutional if the judiciary and is not independent and autonomous, like it mostly has been throughout India, mostly. Not saying there haven't been instances where the judiciary was not uh, overridden by the powers of the legislature, but I think, yeah, like Sarah said, I think that the judiciary right now is extremely in a very vulnerable and weak position, and its autonomy has completely been compromised, because we've seen a number of cases in the recent past about many issues. So I think, like, Article 370, like, we have never had a case where the judiciary hasn't heard about almost 7 crore people in the last almost 1 year, approximately 1 year, 10 months approximately. So we don't have the Supreme Court having hearing petitions on the CAA. We don't have Supreme Court having hearing petitions on Kashmir on 370. So and the way it's been conducting itself also, and for the first time in the independent history, do we have four Supreme Court judges, coming out uh, explicitly and saying that the independence of judiciary is being compromised. So when when the whole environment is in such a way, then I think it gets really difficult for anything to be proved unconstitutional. So the whole notion of justice and the whole concept of like the independent judiciary being the guardian of the constitution is gone, as like that's gone as soon as the autonomy of the institution is
Yeah.
gone. So I think it's very like we need to give absolute respect to the checks and balances which the constitution fathers have given to the system. And the system has its very intricate relationship with a number of different institutions too. If the autonomy of one institution is sort of compromised, and that will be followed by the compromise of a number of
Yeah.
autonomy of the number of institutions.
Do you both think that perhaps the judiciary is weakened, or rather, uh, the unconstitutional behavior is kind of, not really forgiven, but swept underneath the carpet because of the huge majority that our government has with them? Because, again, we are the minority speaking out about it. So does that mean that because they know, and this is putting it in really simple terms, but they know that a lot of people won't care and only this little bit won't care, so what's the harm in doing something like this?
Yeah, I think the government is more chill about passing such laws because they think that nothing's going to happen about it. Not a large section of the people will speak up against it, and that's what happened with Kashmir. That's what happened with a lot of other issues, and they expected the same for the CA and NRC, and that didn't happen. And yeah.
But I think like, yeah, there is a huge majority for the government, but that's what's the point. Ultimately, are we a majoritarian democracy, or are we a constitutional democracy? So there is a the clear line between majoritarian democracy and constitutional democracy. Constitutional democracy works with the
Yeah.
constitution, like it depends on the constitution. It does not. So there being a majority, absolute majority for the government or not, should not really bother like for the Supreme Court. Like that is technically it shouldn't bother, but right now, because of, I think, like I think it's a lot to do with quid pro quo also, especially while it all depends on the Supreme Court collegium, how the judges are appointed, how what the judges are promised after they get retired, and if one particular judge is sort of like favored over the other judges to get the chief justice post in the Supreme Court and all of that. So it depends on a number of issues. So ultimately, also, like we've seen the recent instance of when Ranjan Gogoi, Ranjan Gogoi, as soon as he
Mm-hmm.
passed, like got retired as the chief justice, was promised the member of parliament seat in the Rajya Sabha. And that happened, and he was the one who was sort of like who decided to hear the sexual allegement case on himself. Like
Yeah.
he was the one who heard his own case. So that's quite like ridiculous, and like it's a travesty of justice, if we can call that. So I think, so basically majoritarian governments must not dictate the judgments of the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court is completely independent. Supreme Court is the guardian and interpreter of the Constitution. It should not see how much majority a government actually
Yeah.
technically has in the like in the parliament. So that's something completely unrelated, to be honest.
Okay, and now that now that you brought up majoritarian government and all of that, and if the constitution, which is kind of like basically, if to people who don't fully understand, it is like a rule book and like a guidebook for the country and how to rule it. If that rule book, which is supposed to be the ultimate interpreter, is not what you say, is being misused, or the people don't follow that, um how now since you've entered a majoritarian government, isn't it easy for people who are not for the minorities to lose hope? And like, because it's quite suffocating to be in and still call yourself a democracy, and back to hypocrisy and stuff like
I think I have a couple of things to say here. One is that, like the Constitution already has a number of safeguards for the minorities. Like there are a number of safeguards like for the minorities, regarding their representation, regarding, various, how the religion is supposed to be treated, how a number of things are supposed to be treated regarding the minorities and their educational institutions, their representation, their in government offices and administration, and a
yeah.
lot of things. But see, the thing is, right now we are living in a like at a time when the political discourse sees minority uh, affirmation policies for the minorities is seen as minority appeasement. Like
Yeah, yeah.
anything which is beneficial for the minorities right now is seen as minority
Right.
appeasement, and seen that okay, all of these parties are all of these so-called other political parties are appeasing the minorities, and whatever benefits the majority is called welfarism or nationalism. So that's sort of one thing which like the Constitution is being violated in many ways, very indirectly. Like, well, practically nobody is doing anything to the Constitution on paper, but when it's coming out on practice, I think like we're violating a lot of stuff which isn't there, which are actually which the Constitution has provided for the minorities. And a second thing, like we've had a government right now in 2019 when the BJP got elected. They've got, I think, 303 seats or something, and their alliance got 353 seats or something, like subject to correction. And they haven't had even one BJP MP, like and one MP from a Muslim community as the MP right now. And what does that say? When like electoral politics has become more of a strategy than of anything else. There's like, okay, yeah, if we can target 60% of the Hindu population or 50% of the Hindu population, it's okay. Yeah, that's all we need for us to get a majority. We don't need the votes of the minority at all. It does not matter. So we are living in that type of a discourse right now. So we need to get rid of that. And for that, we can't do anything. All we need to do is to respect secularism, or respect that minorities votes are also really important. And like, it's okay, it might not be minority appeasement, and we need to get rid of this like whole ideology that anything which benefits the minority is minority appeasement. So that they are also equal citizens of the country and equal citizens, so whatever benefits the majority and minority does not matter.
Like if I speak about it and someone just shuts me down and just goes, oh, you can't say that because you're not suffering the same thing, or like, and it doesn't make sense, because I mean, why would I not be affected? Okay, even let's forget just about India. Even if we're zooming across the world, and let's say we're talking about immigrants in the America who are being deported and their children are being, left without parents. And if one of us speaks out about it, it's not like people will be like, how can you speak out about that? You're not an immigrant. You're not doing that, right? So what would you say about behavior like this?
One, if someone says that it's not affecting you, one, it is affecting you, because the second Sarsang Chalak of the RSS, Golwalkar, said that there are three main enemies of the nation: Muslims, Christians, which you are, and communists. So we are included in the people who are affected. It's true that we're not affected as badly as other people, because we are in a protected environment. And secondly, it doesn't even matter if it affects us or not.
That's
We're
true.
standing up for something that's right, and that should be it.
Yeah, so yeah, and to add to what Zara said, we are standing up to the Constitution, and we are, ultimately whatever we are, whatever we can speak is in terms and in relation to the Constitution only. So if the Constitution is violated, I think no matter who that person is, like even if he's the benefactor, he has the right to speak up. And we are living in a society where, like we have the right to freedom of speech and all of that. So I think like ultimately if anything anti-constitutional is actually happening, every citizen of the country has the right to speak up, and I think it is morally correct, and people must speak up. If people don't speak up, then hardly will there be, the constitution will have no importance at the end of
Yeah.
the day. And ultimately, for right, like for all practical purposes, the constitution is like the bible or the quran, or it is the legal book for India and for a country and all of its citizens. So that's what I think about it. So ultimately, it all depends on the constitution.